Hey, MCARBO brother, I'm Chris Nelson, President of CARBO. Really excited to be talking about the Sub 2000 again. So we're going over what is the deal here with these bolt tube covers. We've got one here with a metal collar. We've got one here with a plastic collar. Why does it matter which is which? Why are they different lengths? So as KEL TEC is changing things, we're changing things to accommodate as well. So we need to stay up to date with what's happening. The lengths are changing. The little collars are changing. So these steel collars are going to be outdated and they're going to be all up to date with a plastic collar. So just a little bit more inexpensive manufacturing, I suppose. The molds are changing. So they've got a ton of molds for the Glocks, which have the metal collar. All the new multi-mags, they've changed over that mold and they're now running the plastic collar on all the multi-mags. So why does that matter to you? Well, if you're going to be getting a bolt tube cover from us, which I highly recommend, it's a great way to protect your face. If you've shot one of these yet, you know that's like the first thing people go after is, hey, the steel tube on my face into my cheekbone doesn't really feel that great, kind of distracting when I'm shooting. So this is the solution. Now it's got trim lines so you can adjust for the length of pulse setting. We issue these for the longest length of pull settings. That's where we start. A lot of people run the longest length of pull anyways. So that's what we were trying to shoot for. If you're gonna get the newer single point QD sling mount, it's got just the one QD feature on there, that mounts to the bolt tube. And we made that because the plastic collar, you can't mount one of these QD features to it. It's not even glued on, it's just kind of locked in place and it's plastic. So you can't really mount and really compress that QD feature onto the plastic collar like you can, or you could, on the other one that we've got, the dual QD single point sling mount, which will mount to the metal collar. It's all preference, but as things change, we've got to adapt with them. So we've got a new single point sling mount that adapts to the bolt tube. Bolt tube lengths had to change as well. 3 different options. It's either 5 inches, 5 1/4, or 5 1/2. If you've got a plastic collar, it's going to be 5 1/2 starting point. If you add a single point sling mount to it, it's going to be 5 1/4. If you've got a metal collar, it's going to be 5 1/4 starting point. If you add a single point sling mount to it, it's going to be 5 inches. So that's just kind of in a nutshell how it works. Let's get on over to tabletop though. I want to show you a little closer look so we can go over this in detail. All right, so we're going to go over the Sub 2000 bolt tube cover and how to order it off of the website. So, and why did we change everything up? Well, KEL TEC changed from a metal collar to a plastic collar on the multi-mag platform for now. If you've got a Glock, it's likely you still got a metal collar. If you've got a multi-mag, you've definitely got a plastic collar. So according to KEL TEC, and this information is about 6 months old, but they're eventually, once they're through all this stock on the Glocks, once they've gotten through all of these frame molds, because that's the big thing, is they've got molds already that they've had for years for the Glock, much more than they did the multi-mags. That's why they haven't made the shift yet, because there's a little tiny change on the actual mold for the plastic collar to work. So they're still running the metal collars until they get through all of the older molds, and then they're going to switch over to plastic across the board. So eventually it's all going to be plastic. So we've had a wide array of questions concerning what length to get, and as silly as it may be, you know, whether my collar is plastic or metal. And it's no big deal, man. I mean, I understand, you know, everybody's got to start somewhere. So metal's going to have that kind of that ting, and then plastic, kind of that dud. And then plastic collar is going to have all these little ridges on here, right? So you'll notice here on the metal collar, there's no ridges that go down the full length. On the metal collars, just those little notches right there for the actual wrench that we make for the armor's wrench to fit on. On the plastic collar, it's just these little notches here, and there's a seam line in the center. So you can easily tell it's molded plastic part. This metal has a little ting to it, and the plastic doesn't really have that ting. It's just kind of a hard plastic. This has got that ting to it. Anyway, however you want to figure it out, you know, you could also kind of scrape it, scratch it, but really just look. I mean, this one's smooth all the way in the center. This is the metal. This one with all these notches down the center, it's plastic. All right, so that's hammered out. Now take a look at this screenshot on the website, and you'll notice right away, over on the left, it says we have 5-inch bolt tube covers, 5 1/4, and 5 1/2. Well, there's 2 questions that you have to answer, and however you answer these questions will determine which length you get. So to make it a little simpler, we just wanted to ask you the most important questions, and then we basically had the website set up to give you the correct size. So are you using a QD sling mount, yes or no? All right, so this is the QD sling mount right here. So we've got one that mounts to the bolt tube itself, and then we've got one that mounts to the collar itself. So this is a close-up of one that mounts to the bolt tube itself. Now, we didn't design this one necessarily for the metal collar. We designed it for the plastic collar because you can see here, this plastic collar is actually bigger. So it's bigger than the metal collar. And if you just look, compare it to the outer diameter of this bolt tube, in the collar, plus the shape's kind of different. So it is bigger and it is plastic. So we had to do something. You can see here's the steel collar and relatively the same size. So this new single QD sling mount is to mount to the actual bolt tube itself. So it's a smaller diameter hole on the inside. This is the older style. It's the dual QD, designed to mount on the collar, which works perfectly for the metal collars. If you've got the metal collar, you can run either or, this dual or the single. If you've got the plastic collar, you can run only the single. All right, so back to the website screenshot, you can see, so yes or no QD, all right, and that's up to you. And it's mainly the one that bolts to the bolt tube. So if you're getting the dual QD and you're going to put it on your steel collar, you don't need to worry about that question. You can just say no. Now the second question, it says, do you have a plastic or metal collar? Well, we went over the plastic and the metal, so determine which one you have, and that'll determine the starting point. If you have a plastic collar like this one here, which is on the multi-mags, for sure. Now if you have a Glock, you may need to look, but if you got a multi-mag, you got a plastic collar, unless it's an older one, so there's a caveat there. So the plastic collar here, the starting length is 5.5 inches, all right? And we size everything for the longest length of pull, so the buttstock fully extended like it is here. So 5.5 inches is the starting point. So if you added to this multi-mag with a plastic collar, a single point sling mount that mounts on the bolt tube, you're gonna need a shorter bolt tube cover because that single point sling mount is 1/4 inch wide. So what we did was we subtract 1/4 inch from that 5.5. If you answer that question, are you using a QD sling mount? If you answer yes, we subtract 1/4 inch. So it starts at 5.5 inches for the plastic collar. If you say yes to, I'm using a QD sling mount to mount the bolt tube, we subtract 1/4 inch and you get the 5.25 inch bolt tube cover. So plastic collar, you're either gonna get a 5.5 inch or you're gonna get 5.25. That's it. There's nothing more really to explain on that part. It's either those two options. It's 2 questions there, and we do it on the back end of the website, and basically however you answer is what you'll end up getting. So yes, plastic collar, no QD mount, you're gonna get a 5.5 inch bolt tube cover like pictured here. There's no QD mount. Yes, plastic collar, yes, QD mount, you're gonna get a 5.25 inch bolt tube cover because we need to open up a little space for you to put that QD mount in there. So just try to make it a little easier. As KEL TEC changes stuff, we're just trying to stay adaptive and make sure we're changing with it. And we wanted these to be sized perfectly. Because if you just put a 5.25 on here, it's gonna obviously have a 1/4 inch gap. So when they changed to the plastic collar, it really changed everything up on our end too. The spacing was different. So we had to accommodate for that extra space that was there. It's a little more narrow in terms of width than the metal collar. And the grips are different. So we adjusted for it. Now here's your Glock frame, standard version. This one we sell the most of, 5.25. If you've got a metal collar, it's gonna be 5.25. That's the standard. So you start at 5.25. Metal collar starts at 5.25. Regardless of whether you have a dual QD sling mount on the collar, it doesn't matter. We're just trying to determine bolt tube length. If you had the single mount QD sling mount that mounts to the bolt tube itself, obviously we'd have to subtract 1/4 inch. And that's what it looked like right here. So you can see the black one here has got the single point, single QD mount that mounts to the bolt tube itself. And the green one has got the dual QD mount, which mounts to the collar, really irrelevant when trying to determine the bolt tube size. So you can see the green one's got a 5.25 inch bolt tube. The black one here has a 5 inch bolt tube. Same deal. So if you added a QD sling mount to the bolt tube, we have to subtract 1/4 inch. So with the metal collar, you're gonna start off 5.25. And if you say yes, I'm gonna add a single point sling mount to my bolt tube, so we have to subtract 1/4 inch. So you end up with a 5 inch tube. So metal collar, you're gonna get either a 5.25 inch or you're gonna get a 5 inch if you're adding the single point sling mount to the bolt tube. Plastic collar, you're gonna start out with a 5.5 inch. If you say yes, I'm adding a single point sling mount to the bolt tube, you're gonna end up with a 5.25. So that's how it all adjusts. Real simple and easy. If you just answer the questions on the website, it's gonna spit out the result you need. You don't have to worry about it. All right, so last thing here, I've got an array of bolt tube covers in my hand here. These are the 3 different options you could possibly get. Now, you look at our serial number up here, it's kind of weird, but there's a little code system in here. So the base number is, this 199-802-05505, base number. Then after that, you see some weird stuff. This one says minus 0.250 inches, so that's a 1/4 inch. From plastic, 5.5 inch bolt tube. So it's just saying plastic collar, it gets a 5.5 inch bolt tube cover, but this one is subtracting the 250, which is a 1/4 inch. I know that's really weird. It's just how the website's set up. But if you get this and you're like, hey, it says 5.5 on it, this is not right. Well, I mean, read down here. It says 5 1/4 in fine print down there. So don't try to decode this. It's just for our back end on the website. Same here. So this says 5.5 inch bolt tube cover, you know, in the fine print here. The bolded stuff is just the SKU. So it says NA, not applicable, and it says plastic, 5.5 inch bolt tube. So those match up. That NA just means they're not getting a single point sling mount for their bolt tube. Same deal, sub 2000 bolt tube cover, 5 inch. And then you see here it says, wait, metal, 5.25, and then it's got the little minus 250 1/4 inch, so it's 5 inch. So hopefully that explains it, you know, and then you can open them up and take a look. So this is your 5 incher right here. And obviously it's got the trim lines for the different length of pull settings. So your 5 inch tube, and it's got a smaller cutout for the serial number, just because there's less room at that point on the 5 inch tube. And this one here is 5.5, so this is the longest. It's got a larger window for the serial number, because it is adjustable on those trim lines. This one here is 5 1/4. All right, so you can see them all lined up here. These are the 3 variations. So as KEL TEC changes stuff, you know, we change stuff to adapt to what they're doing as well. So you can see 5 inch, 5 1/4, 5.5. All depends on whatever you're running as far as hardware to the bolt tube, and then which collar you got, and that's it. And then you've got the engraving and the trim lines. It's pretty much the same bolt tube cover. Excellent part. Can be a little confusing now, but hopefully this helps clear it up. Really excited to hear what you guys think. Well, there you go, guys. I hope that really helped. A lot of just in the weeds talk about the lengths that you might need. Just boil it down to its simplest form. If you've got a metal collar, you're gonna start at 5 1/4. If you add a single point sling mount to the bolt tube, now you're at 5. If you've got a plastic collar, you're gonna start at 5.5. And if you add a single point sling mount to the bolt tube, you're at 5 1/4. Single point sling mount is a 1/4 inch thick, so that'll be your variation there. But if you're not adding anything, it's real simple. Metal gets 5 1/4, plastic gets 5.5. If you got a multi-mag, you've probably got plastic. If you got a Glock, you probably got metal. But it just depends on when you got your sub. All the newer production sub 2000s are eventually going to be plastic. The Glocks are the last holdouts due to the older molds and the frames that they've got in inventory. So I hope that sums it all up. Looking forward to what you guys think about it. As always, I appreciate everyone's support. Thank you, MCARBO Brothers especially. Happy shooting.